Okay, everybody, welcome back to the What Now podcast. This is your host, Amanda. I'm so excited for you to listen in and tune in. We've got a great guest for you. You name it, he's done it. As a former addict, he has spent the last 2 decades finding ways to help people recover and escape from addiction. He's a serial entrepreneur, podcast host, lifestyle coach, and professional athlete. He is the founder and owner of the hit overnight oats brand Meal One, which he started from his functional nutrition company called Kreatures of Habit. He is also a former chef, restaurateur who started the Meatball Shop and Seymour's in New York City, and the former TV host of Food Porn, where he got to chat with chefs from all over the country about the most liked and most innovative food made today. So everybody, please bring a round of applause and a warm welcome to Michael Chernow.
Thanks so much for having me. Super excited to be here. What an intro.
Yes, I practiced. No, I'm so glad that you're here. We've got so much to talk about and a finite amount of time. So if it's good with you, I'm going to dive straight in. I know that you've talked a bit on your own podcast and your various digital platforms about your journey and your story as a former addict, but also as an entrepreneur. So I'd love to discuss how those have intertwined, but let's give everybody just a short intro. What do you tell people when you first meet them? What's your elevator pitch, your origin story?
Wow. What's my elevator pitch for people when I first meet them? Well, I try not to give an elevator pitch when I meet people for the first time. I'm a pretty genuine, I'm a down to earth dude. Yeah, I don't really have an elevator pitch for
Yeah. Okay.
who I am. If someone had asked me, or if someone were to ask me what my superpower is, I have a superpower for connecting with people at scale. That is ultimately, I
Okay.
love human engagement. I love human connection. And so that is what drives me. That is what wakes me up every day. That is what keeps me curious and interested in life. And so instead of having an elevator pitch to tell people who I am and what I do, in a minute or less, I really am interested in learning who people are before I give them the goods on who I am. But if you're asking me to tell you my story, I can
Yeah.
happily do that.
Yeah. I don't. Some of my listeners may not have heard of you yet, and if you haven't, I don't know where you're living because I get his ads all the time. But it's high quality stuff. So I would love it if maybe you could tell us a bit more about your particular struggles with addiction and how that's kind of ebbed and flowed over the years. Like it was a finite period of time where you were going through that, and now you've been sober for almost 20. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's
so I
all
figured maybe we
funny.
could dive into that a little bit. We did have early on in the season, I did have a different friend of mine come on and talk about his particular journey with sobriety, and he's been sober now for a little over 3 years. And that episode got a lot of really great feedback because people felt like, they couldn't admit that they had the problem or they didn't know where they could go for help. And I know you often offer a lot of resources for people that are still in those particular positions. So I thought it would be great to kind of open your story and figure out how you've worked through those similar struggles.
Yeah, I'll try to make it as concise as possible. But I grew up in New York City. I have always wanted to make, do, and create. So that's always been something that I've naturally gravitated towards. Always, I'm a proactive human being, so I like to do, and that's from as early as I can remember. And also just thinking entrepreneurially from as early as I can remember. But I grew up in an apartment, small apartment, my mother, my sister, my father, and I, and a couple of cats. And it was tight and it was tough. There was not a lot of love in the house. And there was a lot of aggression and violence, unfortunately. My father was a very aggressive guy. And so I was an escape artist from a very young age. I tried to sleep out of the house as often as possible. And, and I did. As a young kid, I dove into sports because I was put in after school programs because my mother worked full time. My father was on permanent disability and I hated being at home. So any opportunity I had to be out after school, I took. And that meant sports. And I went to public school, so all the sports were essentially free from the city. And so I did a lot of city, sports. And when I was 12, that's when I had really felt like I felt like I was ready to kind of take life by the horns and make my own decisions. I had been I had really broken away from the home. And when I would go home, my father and I would unfortunately get into it physically most of the time, and it was rough. And so I found drugs and alcohol very young. I found drugs and alcohol at 12, and it was amazing for me. It was exactly what I needed at the time, because I kind of hated my life. I felt insecure. I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. I felt unloved, and the drugs and the alcohol really at that age gave me all those things that I was missing. Made me feel confident, made me feel loved by the people that I was hanging out with. Just, this false sense of security that drugs and alcohol tends to do, especially in the beginning. And it was fun for a while. It lasted, a number of years where I really enjoyed it. And it's kind of saved my life, if I'm being honest. But I got into a lot of trouble. I moved out of my parents' house very young. I moved out of their house like permanently at 15, and, began hanging out with a lot of bad people and selling drugs and using drugs. And it was around the clock. At 18, it got really ugly. It became less about trying to numb the pain and way more about reliance on the drugs. And from 18 to 23, that 5-year period of time just was, it's kind of a blur, but it was really, really bad. My life was totally out of control, and unmanageable. No one had really any trust in me. I didn't have any trust in myself. There was zero responsibility that I had responsibilities because I lived on my own, but I didn't really fulfill any of them. So it was always just playing catch up and, just failing over and over and over again. And then it got to a point where heroin became a part of my story, and I had overdosed and had kind of concluded that I was just going to die this way. Like this was going to be the rest of my life for, hopefully not that long. I was kind of at the point where I just didn't want to live anymore. And then I got very lucky. I had slept through work. I slept through work one day, not unlike times before, but I had slept through work. And my job as a bartender at that time was like the only thing hinging me to like reality. I would go to work, had been up for days and going to work, and I was able to conduct because I was drinking and still using drugs there. But I had slept through work for the umpteenth time. My boss finally said, "Mike, you're done. You're fired. I love you to death. You're a great kid, but you're dying. And everybody knows around you that you're dying. And I am not going to allow that to happen on my watch. So you need to go get your shit together, period. Like you need to go get sober or you're going to die. And I don't want it to happen while I'm employing." So I begged for my job, but he was pretty, he held firm on not having me work in the restaurant. But he did make me an ultimatum, and he said, "Hey, if you can get sober and clean you can come to the restaurant for the next 30 days and meet with the porters at 8 o'clock in the morning and clean the restaurant, and I'll pay you hourly to do that, but you will not be allowed to work in the restaurant. And you have to get sober. And if I find out you have a single sip of alcohol or any drug, you're gone for good." And I took the opportunity, and I reached out for help, and I made a phone call to someone who I knew was sober and had a sober boyfriend, and she called her boyfriend. Her boyfriend came to meet me right away, and these two guys came into my life when I was 23, and they sat down with me and they listened to me. Really, it was Marcus who sat down with me first. He sat down and he listened to me tell my story for hours and hours, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like somebody actually had like identified with me. I thought he was a cool person, so I was like, I can actually connect with this guy, even though he's sober for 10 years at that point. Like I felt like I could connect to him, and I said, I was thinking to myself for the first time in a long time, like someone actually cares, like someone's actually listening to what I have to say about what's going on in my head. And he introduced me to fitness and nutrition, and my life has never been the same, because I haven't had a drink since that day. I haven't had a drug since that day. And I started working out and eating well and using mindfulness. And I've built an amazing life from that day, August 2nd, 2004. That's, and so I guess what I would say to anybody listening is like, nobody would have ever thought that I had the ability to get sober based on my track record. Nobody would ever, guaranteed, never ever, like if somebody in August 1st, 2004 said in May 17th, 2024, this is where this guy right now is going to be, the biggest gambling man on the planet would never put a bet on. No way, based on where I was. I was a shell of a human, and now I help shells find their way.
I love that. It's a great way to have your life repurposed through a tragedy or through your trauma. That I know sometimes a lot of people will continue to play the victim game and not find a way to turn that around, or at least find a way to analyze it and make it more useful for their life rather than letting it just stay as baggage. So I think that that's incredible that you did have those people walk into your life apparently at the exact right time. You know, I kind of feel like maybe, and again, you work with more people than I do that struggle with this, but it's almost got to be the exact moment where you're ready to do it, but then you're meeting the motivation at the same time. So you peaked, I guess, right there. So like if they had asked you a day before or a day after, maybe you wouldn't have said yes, or you wouldn't have agreed to, okay, he's right. I respect him. I want this job. I need to find a way to turn myself around. So I feel like that's great that the timing worked out where you were even open to want to share your story, to be honest about what you had done and who you are in that moment in time. Because I'm sure you didn't like yourself either.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think there is this very, very interesting sort of, I call it the moment of grace, where the window opens for a minute and the person is actually willing to take the breath of air in
Mhm.
and have a sense of rationality. Like, this is actually what's happening in my life, and there is a way to change this. It's gonna be hard, but it really is all on me. And so if I want to continue living miserably, and the chances of death are far greater than life, that rationale kind of comes to the mirror, and you can look at it and you can see it and you can say, okay, this is an opportunity for me to change. And it's fleeting, unfortunately. Like I've worked with a lot of people in addiction. I'm currently very active right now in trying to help people make that decision, because I have the resources to help people get into treatment that don't have resources but are willing and want sobriety. But it's not easy, finding people at that right moment. It's not. It's like
Mhm.
it really is. It really does depend on that moment. For years I've been really working on that, and it's a massive part of my mission as a human, trying to really share the beauty of life with no added flavors, which is the way I live. I live life on life's terms, and everything that comes up, I deal with at face value. And I use fitness as my anti-anxiety medicine. That's the
Sure.
truth. I definitely do. Fitness is like a massive, I mean, I would argue to say that fitness and healthy eating and good sleep are far more potent, done consistently, than most pharmaceutical drugs for mental health. I mean, at least in my experience, that like if you
Yeah.
can implement a consistent fitness regimen, eating healthy and well, and sleeping well, and that just requires boundaries, hard and fast boundaries, discipline. You can overcome almost anything by doing that, in my opinion. And I've seen it happen over and over again.
Oh, for sure. I have several friends that fully believe in like doing breath work and how that's and the ice bath thing, before, and the infrared sauna. My brother and his fiance do that too. They're very into the health and wellness type stuff. And honestly, for how much CrossFit and things that they do and the lack of injuries that they've had compared to that, just because they've decided to take the extra time to always eat well, take their nutritional supplements, do the yoga on top of that, like practice taking care of yourself in all the ways, getting a full night's rest, etc. It really seems to help them a lot. And I believe it. If you're able to set up your healthy boundary, I think it will help you, at least the longevity of your life will get so much better and stronger if you're doing those types of daily habits. So I think you're definitely on the right path, and you're preaching to the choir on this show, at least. But speaking of death, since you brought it up, you have described yourself as a roadblock of death or for death for people that are struggling. And I'm curious about what are those projects or collaborations that you've been working on where you have used your platform and your businesses to help sobriety and others. And I was curious if you had any particular projects going on this year that you're doing or developing to help others.
Yeah, so last year, Creatures of Habit, it's a wellness brand. It's a lifestyle and wellness brand rooted in nutritional healthy habits, right? Meal one is one of our products. We also have another product called Nightcap. And yes, we're definitely motivated to sell those products, right? But really, the mission of Creatures of Habit is to help people make better decisions, because with better decisions, you have a better life. It's just like, it's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
Our mission statement is better habits, better life, period. I mean, that's it, right? So, and that doesn't, and there's nothing about oatmeal and sleep support hot chocolate in there. I really want to help people make better decisions, and better decisions done consistently would be considered habits, right? Like, that is a habit is a decision. A part of that for me was my habits almost killed me, came very close, but I replaced my bad habits for great habits, and they've made me the guy I am today. And so I owe my life. I owe my life to habit. And now I kind of know the formula. I know what has to be. And so I created an initiative last year called We'll Wear the Weight, which was a charity event that I put together in collaboration with Go Ruck, which is a rucking company, and the Release Recovery Foundation, which is a nonprofit foundation that raises money for addicts and alcoholics who are ready and willing to get treatment but don't have resources.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was getting sober that first few years, I used to do a run in New York City, and I would run over the Williamsburg Bridge, down to the Brooklyn Bridge, over the Brooklyn Bridge, back over the Manhattan Bridge, and then back over the Williamsburg Bridge. And I used to call it the triple bypass, and I did it 3 to 4 days a week, and it was a massive part of my recovery story, where I would just, I would get out there and I would take out the stress on the pavement, and I would just pound the pavement, and I would go out there and I would really think, and I would, sort of manifest what my life will potentially be
Sure.
over the years. And so when I was thinking about how to create an event to raise money and awareness for substance abuse, I thought that would be it would tell a really great story if I had people rucking with me over those bridges, raising money for the very thing that saved my life. And so last year we did it. We made these really cool custom weight vests. These are actually them. So for anybody who's like, I wear this thing every day, but for anybody who's,
Oh, cool. Yeah.
this
Nice.
is like the Creatures of Habit colorways, and this is the patch that we made that sort of brings all three brands together.
I love that. Yeah.
And it's a weight vest. It's pretty cool.
No,
And
I love the metaphor too, with the tip of the spear right there. Like that's your point. Like that's your decision making. It's your decisive moment, or it's piercing you through to get to where you need to go, or opening the crack in that door. That's cool. I love that.
Yeah, so we made those. 100 people showed up from all over the country. We raised $75,000, and we did the ruck on October 14th for Substance Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month. It was pouring rain, and everybody was just out there. We were all soaking wet and just fired up to be out there, rucking for a cause. And so it was really amazing. I've been able to put so far 4 suffering addicts into treatment, and we'll be able to tell their stories of, coming from the darkness to the light. And so we have more money, and we're going to continue to place people into treatment. But we're going to do the same thing next year, except we're going to turn the volume up a little bit. We're going to bring in some more sort of influential people to help us, create more buzz around it. I would love to raise $250,000 for it, and really make an impact, and really try to get, try to just pay forward what was freely given to me in this recovery, because my life today, I'm living a life way beyond my wildest dreams, like way beyond what I could have ever imagined for myself. That doesn't mean that I'm like, flying in private jets and driving Lamborghinis, because I don't think I would do that anyway, even if I did.
If it doesn't fit you, or you don't like it, you don't have to. Just because you have the ability to doesn't mean you need, if you don't want to.
Right. But I've been able to do really well in my life, and I have a family that I absolutely love, and I'm married 17 years, and I have 2 kids that I love and love me back, and we have a lot of fun, and I've built businesses, and I just, like, I couldn't, sobriety is really the foundation of my happiness and success. Without it, I have nothing.
So I am curious then, every person that I've talked to, or at least especially the last episode where I covered this particular topic, we did discuss like what is sobriety to you, and how do you define it, and what does it mean to you? Because I think each person has a different interpretation of I'm sober from either sometimes it's everything, you don't do anything at all, and then other times it's like I can handle this one thing but I don't do the thing that pushed me over the edge anymore sometimes. So like how do you define sobriety for you in your life, and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, sobriety to me is complete abstinence from any mood or mind altering stuff. And that's just like literally 101 for me. Like that's like has to be the case, right? Like if I say I'm sober but I still smoke weed, I'm not really sober because I will ultimately end up hiding from the shit that I used to hide from with the alcohol and the other drugs in weed, and I'll become obsessive about it. And so for me, sobriety really means abstinence from all mood or mind altering substance. But really what sobriety means is once the lubrication of the drugs and alcohol are gone, then there's a lot of friction, right? There's a lot of friction. There's
Yeah.
a lot of friction as just walking through life because you're stripped of the safety blanket, right? And so really sobriety means the work that's done once the stuff is gone. And so that really for me is the development of a relationship with a power greater than myself that I call God. I don't have a religious, you know, I'm not, I don't have any sort of like secular religious belief, but I am deeply, deeply passionate about a relationship that I have with God. And for me, how it was delivered early on was like, this is a God that you can create. This is a
Mm-hmm.
God that you don't have to know much about. For me, it's just, hey, I know I'm not God. If I can continue to walk in that path, and I know that I'm not the one in charge, because if I think I'm the one in charge, things can get a little hairy. Like if I am the one in charge, and I used to play that role when I was out there. I played
Sure.
that role. I wanted to control everything. I didn't feel good. I wanted to control it. I felt great. I wanted to control it. I wanted this and I couldn't have it. I wanted to control it. Like I wanted to control. I didn't like I don't like what you have to say. I'm going to control it. And now I just know that I can turn it all over. And that has been a massive weight off my shoulders because I now know that I have to accept people for who they are. And if I don't like it, I have to work on changing myself. And that is really what's been the sort of greatest learning of my relationship with a power greater than myself, that I'm not the one in charge. And as long as I know that, like, that's okay. I have to know that I'm not in control. So that is a massive piece of sobriety for me is and then checking in on that daily.
Mm-hmm.
And really like I've been sort of coined as the habit guy, right? I mean, that's kind of where my life has been, because of how structured my days are.
Right.
That is because I'm sober. That is because I need structure. I need structure. I need to have a plan on a daily basis, and I need to feel like I'm winning on a daily basis. And that doesn't mean like I'm winning the race or I'm better than you. That means that like I create small little daily wins that I can stack on top of each other to continue to feed the positive confidence that I need, that the alcohol and the drugs were giving me. Because realistically, and I don't know how much I believe this or pay into this sort of philosophy, but apparently alcoholism and addiction is really a disease and it doesn't leave. It's not like you can take a pill to cure it. It's there in me all the time.
Right.
And the minute I give in and take a sip or use a drug or whatever, that addiction, that alcoholism, that ism is in me live and well, and will pick up right where it left off 20 years ago. So I need to continually on a daily basis, and it's not like I think about this consciously, it's just become my lifestyle. But on a daily basis, I need to create these little wins so that I feel positive and confident about myself and my life. And the byproduct of that is love. Love for myself, which gives me the ability to love others.
Yeah.
And because of that love and because of that confidence, I'm able to take risks. Courage is a big part of my life. I've been able to build business.
I think it's a really good way to look at it, that you've come to terms with the fact that theoretically this is something you'll have to deal with for the rest of your life. So you might as well, if you give up control, then it sounds like you also gave up a lot of the like panic and anxiety that came with the addiction too, because if you were so worried about controlling everything, you never had time to think about anything else. You couldn't grow or you couldn't take those risks, and if you release that control, you're kind of like, all right, if I'm not really in the one with all the power, then it means that I can just focus on myself. I can just do what's going to be better for me and improve my life and thus improve everybody's lives around me if they're choosing to participate or not in this new journey that I've launched. And I think that that's honestly probably the healthiest way to deal with it too, especially if you're initially, I don't know how many of your friends stayed around you after you tried to get sober. Like, I don't know what your support system may have been like, but I think that's really great that you at least set it up for yourself that like, I can do this, but I've got to relinquish control there.
Yeah.
So
And that is what sobriety is for me.
I think that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Let's talk a little bit about your post-addiction life. You're around 23, 24 now. You've decided to get sober. When did you open some of your other businesses? Were you the restaurateur first, or did you start Creatures of Habit first?
So I was working in restaurants since I was basically 12 years old,
Okay.
and restaurants was what I knew, both kitchen and front of house. And I decided at 24, at the end of my 24th year, that now that I had sort of like some grounding to stand on, I'd been sober for a little over a year. I had met my now wife, but my girlfriend at the time, who I was madly in love with, and I knew that I wanted to create a life. And I knew that I loved working in restaurants, but I knew that I didn't want to work in restaurants forever. I'd made a decision that I wanted to actually own my own. And so I decided to go to culinary school, and I went to culinary school. I did the full chef's culinary program, and then while I was there, had launched a restaurant management program in collaboration with the Cornell School of Hospitality. So I applied for that, and I actually got the scholarship for that, and I ended up taking that course as well. So it took me about 2.5 years or so to graduate from culinary school. And as soon as I did, I was 27, I guess, at that point. I wrote a business plan. It took me about a year to put like this vision together with the team and everything. But I wrote a business plan. I dragged my childhood best friend back from California to open up the meatball shop with me. February 9th, 2010, we opened up our first restaurant, the Meatball Shop. And it was an unbelievable success.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We opened up that restaurant.
Yeah.
And then paid our investors back in 6 months. One of those investors saw like a real gold mine in the business, and we opened up 5 more over the next 2.5 years. And then I decided that I wanted to see if I had what it took to open up a second restaurant concept. So I took some equity out of Meatball Shop, sold some equity to the partners there, and launched Seymour's, which is my second restaurant concept, in 2015. And that one did the same thing. Opened the doors, massive success, and I opened up 5 more of those. So I'd opened up 12 restaurants in the course of, from 2010 to 2019. I had the same feeling I did with Meatball Shop. I'd been running Seymour's for 5 years. I had a great partner that was really, really strong at scaling business. So we had a plan that if we got to a certain threshold in revenue, he would buy my equity, or the majority of my equity. He would then scale it, and I would go and open up another business, because that's what I love to do. And that's what we did in 2019. Late 2019, I sold him and the other partners there, the investors, a bunch of my equity. Still kept the equity at Seymour's and Meatball Shop. But then I went to go, start developing my new project, and then the pandemic hit.
Yeah. And then it ruined everything, I'm sure, or at least derailed a little bit of your dream.
Well, derailed that whole plan, right?
Yeah.
Derailed the whole plan. But I my original plan was to open up a restaurant called Kreatures of Habit, and it was going to be a wellness restaurant, because I knew I needed to do something that was way more aligned with my passion. And when the pandemic hit, I had to rethink my whole life, because my whole life was wrapped up in this world of restaurants. And I was also banking on like future revenues from Meatball Shop and Seymour's down the road after they had scaled. Like, I had still gained equity. So I was like, oh my gosh, what if those things completely crumble? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I got to say, like, the years and years of building confidence through fitness, nutrition, mindset, sleep, asking for help, mentorship from others. I hired an executive coach who really gave me a crash course on what it means to be a creative entrepreneur. I've always known that I've been an entrepreneur, but for years I was a restaurateur, right? Like, and there's a
Sure.
distinction, right? There's entrepreneur and restaurateur, and entrepreneur can do really create business in many different ways. Restaurateur is very specific, creating business in restaurants. I wanted to evolve from restaurateur to entrepreneur. And this woman that I hired to help me was like, absolutely, that is what you should be doing. You just need to pivot. You're a creative entrepreneur. You don't need a restaurant as a medium. You can create out of anything. And so that's what I did. I drew a line through the restaurant and I created the brand Creatures of Habit, which is now what I'm the founder and CEO of. And
Mm.
it's the best decision I've ever made because I have breakfast and dinner with my family every single day. And I'm able to work from anywhere, really. It's a different life, but it's wonderful. It's
Yeah.
wonderful. It's super hard. It's always a grind. I am, never not like lifting up rocks and trying to figure out how to get it done and get it done better. And so that's kind of what Creatures of Habit is, and that's the transition from restaurants to Creatures of Habit.
To Creatures of Habit. Gotcha. Yeah. No, I think that's really smart that you kind of could see the writing on the wall there and go, okay, I don't want to give up this concept or this brand or this particular idea. How do I morph it into what's going to fit in today's situation? Right. And if
Yeah.
opening the restaurant was definitely not going to work during COVID, how do I still give this the life that it deserves? Because obviously it's not something you wanted to let go. And I kind of feel like that's how people should know that something like is really valuable to them. If you keep thinking about it all the time and it's in the back of your mind and like you've wanted to develop that particular thing for forever, like it's probably your body telling you something that like this is important, you value this could be something. I don't think you would think about it that much or desire it that much if it wasn't meant for you to at least try. So I'm glad that you didn't give it up completely. Would you ever consider trying to turn it into a restaurant concept one day, or like a food truck or something, at least? Like, because I think you're right, the health and wellness food genre is becoming much more popular and accepted across the country, not just in like bigger cities where people might be more active and things like that. People are starting to care about what they put in their bodies as a whole. And I think that movement in the nutrition field is really, really important. So I'm just curious, would you ever actually still do it, but call it something else if it's not going to be called Creatures of Habit? Or
I don't think I would do the Creatures of Habit brand as a restaurant now that I'm running it as a consumer packaged good business.
Mhm.
I think I'll open up a restaurant again down the road. I mean, now that I don't live in New York City anymore and I live in upstate New York where there's far less people, far less people,
Right.
and not enough people that I think would be drawn to eating like wellness focused food. I have a concept that I would want to do, I will want to do that I want to do down the road that would be like a really fun passion project that I can put my kids to work in because I've always had this sort of
Yeah.
romantic vision of like my kids, washing dishes and bussing tables and really getting the grit of the restaurant business because I do think that what the restaurant business does do for people is it really gives them grit. You have to hustle. Like
Oh, for
you
sure.
gotta hustle. It's hard work, and I want that for my sons. So I'm not saying that I'd want to open up a restaurant just to give my kids grit, but I do love the restaurant business. I love
Yeah.
hospitality. I love touching people, and I mean that like in the business. For me,
Mm.
putting my hand on somebody's shoulder and asking them how they're doing is something I love. At one point, I had 600 employees between Meatball Shop and Seymour's. It was crazy.
Right. No, that's
And
incredible.
I would go around to all the restaurants and with the management and I would try to make some of the full staff meetings, but it was obviously hard to make all those meetings. But I would always say, hey, if you can touch your guests, like if you can physically touch them, shake a hand, high five, put your hand on their shoulder, if you feel like that's appropriate, I'm telling you that connection, not just connecting verbally, connection, human to human connection
Mhm.
is very intimate and really creates trust. And it sounds funky. And even in today's day, right? Like, oh my God, you can't touch anyone. You can't touch somebody. No, you cannot put your hands on somebody.
Sure.
I don't believe that. Human beings are meant to touch each other, you know? And
Yeah.
it's an endearing, comforting, like soothing thing. And we're in the hospitality business. So I would literally put my hand on a guest's shoulder all the time and say, hey, I just want to thank you so much for coming in here. And they love it. You know,
No,
they
yeah.
love it. And so that's important to me. There's fulfillment that I get in that is hard to get in the digital landscape.
No, you can't. A two-way screen, a 2D life is not, I don't think, sustainable. So I think it's great that you do consider how do you continue to build human connection across all the businesses that you decide to open, but especially in restaurants, like food, I feel like food and music are the common denominator for all humans. So like everybody can understand it or appreciate it. Everybody's got their favorite, and in order to share that and connect with others, you share it and give it to them. So I feel like that makes so much sense. Why else would people want to be a regular at a restaurant or a bar or a place where they feel like it's home or people know them, or I can sit down, you already know what I'm going to order and you're already going to bring it to me. And that's comforting and that feels good, and who
Feels
doesn't
so
like to say hi to the chef, or like be like, oh yeah, I know this guy. Yeah. Cause he knows me because I come in and it's one of my favorites. And I feel like you want it to feel like that because you want those customers to continue to come back. And like word of mouth has been the most powerful thing. We For the audience, we were talking earlier before we started recording that my brother did CrossFit, but his main job actually is a chef. He works at a works for a bed and breakfast company in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. And it's just been so cool watching him grow and work at the various restaurants over the last few years since he graduated college. And like, he didn't think he would be a chef. It just kind of fell into his lap. Like his original path was to become a teacher and a coach, a high school athletic coach. And it didn't happen. So he needed a job in the meantime until he could get that job. And turns out he was really good and he got thrown into the line of fire. And at his first job, they were like, all right, you've never worked in the back before? Show up tomorrow. Here's your apron. And he just had to like kind of pick it up and learn quickly. And he did so well that very first night that the chef invited him back again and like taught him everything that he knows now. And like, obviously he's picked up a lot of things from working in different places, but it's been so cool to see him do that. And now he's the executive chef for the restaurant that he works at now. And it's exciting to see him fall into his place and have similar experiences to what you're talking about. Like he wants his food to connect with people and he wants to be able to show his art, but make it approachable and provide things to his particular community in that part of North Carolina that they wouldn't normally have. But like, it's awesome to see him love that. And so it's great to hear you say that too, because it kind of validates that experience is real. And that's the best way to go about how to connect with others, is just to share what you love too. So I think that's great. Let's keep going then. Now that we've reflected a bit on your various business and your entrepreneurial goals, what have you learned about yourself since your transition from restaurateur to entrepreneur? Like, what has running and starting your own businesses taught you about you?
The hardest part of entrepreneurship is boundary setting. You can, as an entrepreneur, you are able to easily work from 7 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the morning, all around the clock. You can do it without having to take a break. And so I think what I've learned really from the transition is now that I don't need to be in a physical space necessarily, although I have an office necessary for me to know what time I open the computer and what time I shut it down. And I need to be diligent about that because I have a family that I love and I don't want to live to work. I used to think that was like you know, something to be proud of. I work out, I work hard, I work 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. Maybe I take a day off. I'm hard. And
Mm-hmm.
I used like as a young entrepreneur, you kind of wear that badge. I work 18 hours. It's just like grind culture. Hustle culture. Like it's just. And today, I'm the exact opposite. I'm like, if I can't get it done in 8 hours, I'm a shitty entrepreneur. Because if I can't get done what I need to get done for that day, And that doesn't mean get everything done. That just means like, I've got 3 things that I want to get done today. And I try to set my days up like that. I got the top 3. 3 things I want to get done today. And if I can't get those 3 things done and I've given it my all within 8 hours of work, I've done something wrong. I don't have the right people around me. I'm not in a supportive enough environment, physical environment to allow me to focus. I have not prioritized my focus. Potentially I'm on my phone, so what does that mean? I need to be way more cognizant of putting my phone into do not disturb or shutting it off. But so boundaries have been like a very big part of my, I guess you would call it chapter 2 of entrepreneurship for me, which is coming from the restaurant business and now into a totally different industry. Really, it's about boundary setting. It's about having patience. Nothing happens fast. Nothing great happens fast. It is truly a marathon. It truly all takes time. Typically, when I really do believe in morning routine. I think morning routine is so important for someone like me. Very, very important, because I do appreciate control in my life. I don't think I'm a control freak or a control nut, but I do appreciate control. However, I have learned that once a single living being comes into my periphery, I have lost all control. That person can kill me. That person can push me. That person could need my attention. That person could, teach me something. But regardless, as soon as another living being steps into my periphery, the control is out of my hands. And I like to wake up super early in the morning now so that I have a good hour and a half, before my family wakes up, to have complete control over how I set myself up for the day. And that's also something that's really kind of come into fruition over the last 5 years, 6 years, where I've really prioritized these early morning hours so that I can be completely indulgent in wellness, self-care, and not have to worry about, should I be sitting in my sauna while while I could be doing that at 5:20 in the morning? Not many people are, needing my attention. So I could totally sit in the sauna and cold plunge and red light and meditate and read and do all the things I like to do early in the morning before everybody else gets up without feeling guilty about it. And that's another thing that I do believe is also, important for me. And then lastly, I think, fitness is a true sign of discipline. And I'm not talking about just physical fitness. I'm talking about mental, physical, and spiritual fitness. And so I think that when you walk through life a fit human, the opportunities that come your way are far more frequent than if you walk through life an unfit human. People appreciate discipline without having to ask, are you disciplined? Are you organized? People see it when somebody walks into a room that's physically, spiritually, and mentally fit. And so anybody listening, if fitness, mental, physical, and spiritual is not a massive part of your list of priorities, it should be at the top of your totem pole. If that's not you and you want to see serious growth in your life and you want to be happy and feel good, I would course correct your priority list. Because if your business is the first thing on your priority list, that's going to be a problem for you. You need to be the number one priority before your husband or wife, boyfriend or girlfriend, children, whatever. You need to be the number one priority so that you can show up the best version of yourself in life. I put myself before everything. And that doesn't mean that I sacrifice time with my business and my family. That means that I just sacrifice my own time early in the morning so that I can be the best version of me.
Yeah.
Because after 6:30 in the morning on a typical day where I'm at home, I have done like 17 things that have all been wins that I have complete control over that make me feel unstoppable.
Get you ready for the day. You can be focused. You don't feel derailed because you've already taken the time to take care of yourself. And I think that's really crucial.
And anything that happens throughout the day, whether it's with business, my family, whatever, I'm just far more prepared for because I'm not thinking about myself. thought about
Mhm.
myself.
You're not like checking your watch, being like, can I go work out now? Can I go take my supplement? Can I go do my meditation now? Can I go whatever? Yeah, you're actually like, I did it. I covered it. I feel good about what I've accomplished today because I at least got this much done and I got this time in. And I think that's great. It keeps you set up and, ready to move forward. That's really, really important. And I assume those habits took time to build and that boundary setting took time to build because I'm sure when your kids were younger, they'd wake up at all times of the day. So you couldn't always be up at 5 to do what you needed to do. So I'm sure also having flexibility in your life has been important and staying,
100%.
reasonable about your schedule.
100%. I mean, I'm coming off of being sick, right? And so I have not woken up at 5 o'clock in the morning in 10 days. I've been sleeping in and giving myself an opportunity to get 8, 9 hours of sleep every night because I know that I'm not feeling well. And getting 7 hours of sleep, which is traditionally what I get, isn't going to benefit me as much as getting 8 or 9 hours of sleep, right? So like I am
Sure.
super flexible with it. We got a puppy in September. So we
Okay.
got the puppy in September, and my wife was like, I wanted the puppy, and she was like, you want the puppy, so you're going to be on puppy duty every morning. And I was like, done. And so that was, until he was trained to stay in his bed
Sure.
for 6 weeks. I woke up at 5, but I wasn't to go sit in the sauna and, meditate. It was to go take the puppy out and be with him in the morning, working with him, training him, and
Yeah.
doing those things while everybody else was sleeping. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
so flexibility, I think, is absolutely necessary in the world of like structure and habit, morning routine. Like you can't beat yourself up if you're not able to do it, right? If you're traveling or whatever it
Yeah.
is. But there are a set of non-negotiables that I do think everybody should have. And for me, I call it prayers, push-ups, and poses. That's my morning routine. Whether I'm sick, whether I'm traveling, whatever, I always pray every morning. I always do push-ups right after I pray, and then I always do a bunch of yoga poses. And that's just how I get my day started. It's awesome to be able to do red light and breath work and stretch and sauna cold and all that stuff.
Hmm.
That's a privilege, but having a few things that I do every single morning that are non-negotiable for me to give me that sense of I'm here, I think is it's definitely essential for me, and I would argue that most people would really benefit from having some of that stuff.
Oh, I think that's wonderful that you have ways to ground yourself. That's really, really important. What advice would you give somebody if they're interested in becoming an entrepreneur, but they don't really know where to start or how to, work for themselves? What kind of advice would you give somebody that wants to start down that similar path?
Well, I think there's a few questions you need to ask yourself, and I know this is going to sound weird, but this is sort of
That's okay.
how I kind of see it. First question is, what time do you go to bed at night? And if the answer is 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, then I would say you need to change that, right? You like self-awareness and self-discipline and ultimately kind of self-mastery is really what does create great entrepreneurs. Going to bed late at night never produces and there are a lot of people that say, oh my gosh, I can't, my juices start flowing at 10 o'clock at night and I work until 3 o'clock in the morning. And my answer to that is, yeah, but the world starts working at 7 o'clock in the morning. So like that might work for you. But in my experience, people that go to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning and wake up at 7 are
Hmm.
getting 4 hours of sleep and not functioning. People that go to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning and wake up at 9 or 10 are way behind the ball. So I always say for people that have the ability to do this and really want it, become a 9 to 5er. Go to bed at 9 and wake up at 5 and see how different your life is. See how much more productive your life is. That's my first always my first piece of advice. And people are like, that's fucking weird. Like, I don't know if that's real. And I'm like, okay, like, I mean, that's the truth for
Okay,
me.
but that's
You know what I
that's the
mean?
advice. Yeah.
Like if you can
Okay.
control that, if that's something that you can harness and you can own
Hmm.
that, this is what time I go to bed and this is what time I wake up. And as soon as I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning or 5:15 in the morning, I am on fire and I'm getting after my day. Your ability to do becomes far more real than than your consistency in talking.
Hmm.
A lot of people talk and a lot of people want,
Right.
right? There's far less people that actually do. And the
Hmm.
only way to get from want to have is to do. There's no other way. It's impossible. You cannot have anything you want without actively doing things to get it.
Yeah.
You can talk about it all the time, but I've always said want plus do equals have. That's the only way. So, and I have found that the easiest way to get to have is to start your day before everybody else. And that doesn't mean that you have to open up the computer at 5 o'clock in the morning, but that means that you start building confidence, building, like you commit, you build confidence, confidence develops courage. And that courage is necessary for entrepreneurship. And the more confidence you have, the more courage you'll have. And that really does start by self-care. I mean, that's
For sure.
my experience, so that's my advice. Anybody who's thinking about it, like, remember what I said about being fit, mental, physical, spiritual. The 9 to 5 thing, not 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. That's the time that you recover from your day. And that is like a really, really great system to start owning your life, saying, I go to bed now and I wake up now. And that doesn't mean, like, I'm not saying, hey, like, don't ever enjoy your life and go out and have a good time.
Right. Yeah. You don't have to do that on vacation. Like if you
Right,
know
but
you
on a
really need the
consistent
day. If you're
basis,
sick,
like,
like you said, yeah. If you're sick, be reasonable. Yeah.
on a consistent basis, if
Yeah.
you can set that sort of structure and foundation and boundary, I really do believe that that is the step one to commit, confidence, courage. And courage is necessary. It's necessary. You cannot do it without a ton of courage and the confidence to take risk, you know.
There you go. Dropping knowledge everywhere, all over this podcast. That's great. Yeah. So, how do you define success, and what does success look like to you?
Success to me is how I feel about myself right now.
Okay.
Period. That's it. I don't correlate it to how much money I have or how much money I've had or what I have necessarily. It's how I feel about myself right now. And so there are days where I feel super successful and there are days where I don't. But I think success and happiness are like, they're intertwined. I know a lot of super successful people that don't have a lot of money. And I know a lot of people that have a lot of money that don't have a lot of success and happiness. So I really do think it's an inside job. And I really do believe that it has to do with the humans you surround yourself with, the hobbies that you have, and the habits that you do consistently, right? And I think that those humans, hobbies, and habits really,
Yeah.
and that like I really do think that like those three things could very well just be the trifecta for success in life, because it really is about a feeling. It's not a tangible, for me, it's not a tangible physical thing. It's way more about a feeling. And I will say, there's no doubt about it that like 85% of the time I am incredibly successful in my mind where
Sure.
I am right now. This morning I was out on a ruck with my two dogs. It was unbelievably beautiful. I felt so successful in my life. I felt so successful in my life. I was like, this is amazing. Like my life right now is amazing. Even though I sound like a goddamn trombone, and
No, no, it's not that bad. I promise.
but I felt so successful this morning, and I feel super successful sitting on this podcast with you right now.
Oh, wonderful.
I've learned that drawing success to a line item is really what we're kind of unfortunately taught to do today. Like when
Yes.
you hear success, you think money. You think house, car, vacation. House, car, vacation comes when you feel good about yourself and confident and have courage, right?
Yeah.
Very hard to have courage, real courage, without confidence. And it's very hard to build confidence if you like hate the life you're living, you know?
For sure. Yeah.
And so I think success really is drawn directly to how you feel.
I like asking that question because each guest has a very different perspective on what it means to them. And so it's very cool to hear your ideas as well. So I think that's really nice. What is your favorite thing about yourself?
I think it's my authenticity
Okay.
that I don't change based on the environment that I'm in. I just am who I am. And I tend to make friends wherever I go because I really care about people. I love people. I love connecting with people. So I think authentically, I am a people lover. And I think that that's something that I was born with, honestly. So,
Oh, that's good.
yeah, that's it, my authenticity.
Wonderful. What would you say has been your greatest achievement?
My family, the marriage that I have with my wife for 17 years. We've been together 19 years, married 17 years, and we have two amazing sons that love us and we love them intensely.
Yeah,
We have an awesome family. Like our family life is amazing. And so that is by far and away, without a doubt, my favorite, most cherished accomplishment in life.
that's wonderful. I'm very glad to hear that for you. And honestly, that's extremely rare these days for people to be in a happy and supportive relationship like that and still be married at that point. So I think that that's phenomenal that you've been able to cultivate that and keep that and continue to see that grow in a successful way. So that's fabulous. What are your current goals for this year?
Current goals for this year. Well, I mean, I've got some business goals for sure. But I'll talk to you. I mean, I'll talk to you about my fitness goals. So I have a race coming up on June 1st called the High Rocks. So
Okay.
one of my goals is to just get through that race. And then the fitness goals that I've got sort of subsequently after that are, I really want to, I really want to build my speed as a sprinter. So I really want to get
Oh,
into sprinting
okay.
and back to strength training. So like I'm kind of back on the strength training and sprinting thing. I used to be a long distance runner, and long distance running is really hard on my joints. So now I've just like I do love running and I love the act of running, but I feel like I can get what I want from sprinting. I don't have to go on these long runs anymore. So sprinting, I'm going to try to really build speed, and I'm excited about that. That like makes me excited. Business wise, we have a target of doing 5 million in revenue this year. So that'll be our third year in business. We're trying to hit or reach 5 million. And that would be amazing. We're launching a new product, and that's a massive goal for my business life. And my overall goal for family is, and I'm not there yet, but I'm working on it, is
Sure.
to take 150 days off a year.
Oh, wow.
That's the
Okay.
plan.
Yeah.
So if you take off every weekend, you're at 104 days. And then you take 3 10-day vacations, gets you to 134 days. And then that leaves me with like 16 days throughout the year that I've got to figure out where to find times to take off. But I'm close. And I had a guy named Gino Wickman on my podcast a while back. And he told me that he's a very, very accomplished, super successful guy. And he said when he figured out how to take off 150 days a year, he felt free completely in his life. So he
Hmm.
was
Interesting.
incredibly excited to work the remaining, whatever it was, 214 days. But the 150 days that he took off really brought immense joy and allowed his work life to really flourish. And so as soon as I heard that, was a few years ago, that's sort of like a goal for me to get to 150 days off a year.
That's pretty significant, right? Like actually taking the time off. And again, going back to what you said earlier in the podcast, setting boundaries for yourself. Like you can't grow as an entrepreneur or as a business owner if you're not giving yourself the chance to like recover, recuperate, enjoy the rest of life, and then come back fully, re-energized with new ideas or plans after you gave yourself some time to actually just live
Yeah,
too.
work to live, don't live to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of the way.
No, that's cool. So, our final question for the day: what advice do you have for people who may be feeling lost in their current life situation and they need to make a change, but they don't know how or they don't know where to start?
Yeah, for me, it's gonna come right back to fitness, mental, physical, and spiritual. If you can't figure out what to do with work, you can't figure out what to do with a relationship, you're having a hard time with money. The most incredible success I've had coming out of tough times in my life has always been through fitness. It has always been through moving my body, connecting with my mind, and eating well. And unfortunately, when people are going through, when a lot of people are going through tough times, they do the exact opposite. They isolate, they stagnate, they eat shit, and they try to tune out from everything else in their lives and not look inside. So movement, I would say, if meditation is something that you're comfortable with, meditation or prayer, and then eating healthy. And like and those three things done consistently, again, it comes back to that commit, confidence, courage. It's just, there's a great documentary called, I think it's called Fits or Spits. It's Jonah Hill did a documentary on his therapist. And this is his therapist, and his therapist is like a very, well-to-do Hollywood therapist, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
But when I watched what his therapist, when I was like studying this documentary, and his therapist said, yeah, the number one thing to do for people that are struggling or lost is to come back to self. You can't be lost here. You cannot be lost here. You can be lost there, but you can't be lost here. And if you come back here, you will find what you're looking for. A lot of people shut this off and try to find it here, outside of you.
Yeah.
So if you come back inside, it's impossible to get lost. You will be found. You will find what you're looking for. And that's been my story. That's been my success. I always take it back to my mind, my body. And it's gotten me through everything.
Yeah, and just taking care of you. Oh, that's heavy, but in the best way possible. I really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing your story and all of your insights and, suggestions for my audience. This is great. And I think they'll get a lot out of this and hopefully be able to implement some of the key topics that we've, covered here today and implement that into their lives and hopefully make some improvements. So I can't wait to hear, the feedback on that. And please let everybody know what's the best way if they want to interact with you or, start listening to your shows or connect with your businesses. What's the best way to do that? And if they want to work with you, how should they contact you?
Sure. I'm at Michael Chernow everywhere on all social media handles. I have a website called Michael Chernow. It's michaelchernow.com. There's some cool stuff on there that they can interact with. But, for the business, creaturesofhabit.com, it's creatures with a K. So creaturesofhabit.com, you can find and learn all about our brand, our mission, and the products that we sell to help you make better decisions on a daily basis. We also have a podcast called the Creatures of Habit podcast that, I get to sit down with a bunch of people that have really inspired me and talk about habits, routines, and rituals, as well as, dive into some experts that I brought on the show to talk very specifically about different arenas and industries. So Creatures of Habit with a K, Michael Chernow, pretty much everywhere. And that's really me. And if you're running around New York City and you want to get a good meal, stop by the Meatball Shop or Seymour's Restaurants.
No, I definitely need to go check those out. If I'm ever back up in the city, they are now on the hot to-do list. So that would be wonderful. And congratulations on all of your success and for, again, like you said, being true to yourself and sharing your authentic story. I think you are having an impact on more people than you truly realize, whether they reach out to you or not. This is incredibly influential and helpful, and I'm sure healing for many people. And hopefully every time you tell your story, it continues to encourage people to take control of their life and make better decisions so that way they can turn themselves into a creature of habit. So I look forward to seeing what else you do and learning about your future endeavors too. I think on one of your previous podcasts I listened to, you were considering doing like the Creatures Summer Camp or something like that, or Creature Camp. Yeah. I am a new member of the creature community now, especially after this episode, but I would love to follow along and learn more about that too. So I'm very excited to see where you go and what else you can accomplish. But thank you again so much for coming on the show. It's just been an absolute honor to talk with you and learn more about everything that you're working on.
Thanks so much for having me.